Talk and rock radio, where friends meet at the intersection of life, inspiration, and music. Here's your host, Rick Kern.
With over 2,500 performances in 19 countries during a unique career that spans over 30 years, Michael Peterson has had the good fortune to be a million-selling Grammy-nominated country music star whose songs have hit #1 on the charts 13 times, including the fourth most popular country wedding song of all time, From Here to Eternity, and the iconic Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie. A songwriter for the stars, with the unusual good fortune to have had his compositions recorded by Hall of Famers and Grammy winners in country, rock, pop, gospel, and Latin, including Travis Tritt, Timothy B. Schmidt of the Eagles, pop superstar Denise Williams, the Imperials, and Basilos. Musical director for the #1 show in Branson, Missouri, Raiding the Country Vault. A contributing author for 8 books, including his latest, Little Is Good, and the New York Times best-selling Chicken Soup for the Soul series. The recipient of numerous distinguished public service awards, including the prestigious Bob Hope Spirit of Hope Medal from the USO, following his 11 tours and over 150 performances for servicemen and women deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, and South Korea. Michael's most recent CD, Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie, commemorates his 20th year in country music and has been particularly successful in Europe, giving Michael a nearly unprecedented 4 consecutive #1 hits on the European Country Music Top 40 in 2018 alone. He and his wife, Army Women's Hall of Fame inductee Colonel Jill W. Chambers, U.S. Army retired, currently live in Las Vegas, have 3 daughters, and a dream life.
From here to eternity, I'm asking you to share your life.
From Las Vegas, Nevada, welcome Michael Peterson.
Hey, man, how are you?
Fine, how are you, man?
I'm doing great.
It's really good to have you on board with us today, and I have to thank our dear friend, Stephen McClintock, for making this happen, man.
Well, Steven's a great guy, and I really appreciated when he called me and told me that he had a great time with you. He asked me if I wanted to do it, and I thought, yeah, why not? Let's go.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Well, it's cool, and I, after looking at all of your stuff, Michael, I am so impressed with you and all of the things that you've accomplished in the last 30 plus years. It's amazing. It really is. And I think what I'd like to do is jump in this thing with you, telling us a little bit about, well, first of all, you're from Tucson, Arizona. We know that. And I wanted to have you talk a little bit about how you got going in the music industry. At what point in your life did you realize that this is what you wanted to do for a living?
I remember sitting, I was probably 21 or 22. And I was sitting in the living room of the apartment that I was renting with my best friend, looking through the help wanted ads to see if I could find a job, because I needed a job, as most 22-year-olds probably do. So, I'd been driving pizzas to people's houses for Domino's for a while. And I had worked some for the Parks Department there in Renton, or in Redmond, Washington. And I just remember sitting there looking at all of these, ads for help wanted. My background was psychology. That's what I went to college for. But, I left about 6 months prior to graduating, so I didn't have my degree. And a bachelor's degree in psychology is on some levels pretty much worthless unless you're trying to get a master's. So I just struggling, like see so many people do at that age. And I just remember having the strongest feeling that there was nothing in the paper that was going to be there for me, and there was nothing that was ever going to be in the paper, that was going to be a job that I would want for a lifetime. And I spent all my free time with a guitar in my hand and a pen in my other hand. And I was writing 25 songs a year, whether my friends liked them or not, and I just was consumed with it. It was something that was really important to me. So at that point, it was just a dream. Like, could I ever make a living as a songwriter? Could I ever have hit records? Like that ever even be possible? I just knew that was the only thing I was deeply and profoundly interested. And, it's worth noting that was 40 some years ago. And the feeling is as strong today as it was then, and it has never wavered. So I think that's probably a good indication that I'm in the right lane anyway.
Well, there's no doubt about that, and I got to tell you, you and I have identical similarities here, because from 69 to 72, I went to college here at the University of Texas at El Paso. And what do you think I got my degree in?
Psychology.
Yeah, and it's a BA. And right after that, I loaded up my van, put everything that we had in storage, and we went on the road for 5.5 years.
Right. Yeah. So, right. We have that in common. I mean, there's a song that I wrote once called "What Should I Do with My Life?" And the chorus says, "Should I turn left or turn right? Move on from here or sit tight? There's only one way to tell, so you might just as well take a chance on your dreams and roll the dice, because that's where the answer lies. What should I do with my life?"
Nice.
And that really sums up what for me has been the driving gamble, the gamble that I've taken really all along this journey through adulthood and professional career was take a chance on your dreams. I mean, I knew, there was never a shortage of jobs available in the newspaper, even if there were jobs I didn't want to do. And I thought, if it doesn't work out, I can always go grab one of those until I figure out a way to get back in the lane. So I just kept taking a chance on my dreams.
In the process of your music development, Michael, did you pretty much just get out there and expose yourself with agents and playing the bars and clubs and stuff?
No, I
you
had
didn't.
I had a very non-traditional. I mean, if you think about the way that I think I haven't ever had a deep conversation with many people about this. So some of the things I'm about to say are assumptions, but I see a lot of young people that, they create a game plan for getting in the music business. And it pretty much is summarized by what you just said. You get in a band, or you find places to play, and you try to go do that. So I had friends that I knew that were in the music business in Seattle, where I was living at the time, in the mid to late 80s. And the ones that were chasing the music business were, they were playing in cover bands. And on Friday night and Saturday night, they'd be at Waldo's, tavern there in Redmond playing, or they'd be at Parker's, in Seattle. And, they were having fun. And I think they were making some money, but they weren't playing original music, and most of the people that I knew that were trying to play original music were big time struggling to make it. I didn't want to wonder how I was going to pay my rent every month. So in my probably around the age of 22 or 23, I stumbled into a church one day called Eastside Foursquare Church. And long story short is, within a year, they offered me an internship in their music department. And within a year of that, they offered me a full-time job. So I ended up, for the first several years of my, professional career as a, sort of post-college, after I finished with, whatever pickup jobs that I had gone through to get to that place, I ended up as a staff member at this church for a couple of years. And I was coaching football and basketball and track at a local high school. And I was a part-time on to being full-time worship leader and staff songwriter. And the pastor of this church was a really innovative guy. He was way ahead of his time. Seems sort of normal now for churches to have staff songwriters. But this would have been, 1984, 85. And he had staff songwriters. And so I found myself in a place where I was in front of an audience 2 to 3 times a week, singing and interacting with an audience. And it was church music, yes, but the dynamics of being with an audience and understanding how to communicate. And then the people I had around me were really good at. I had mentors. And I was being paid to write songs. Now they were church songs, but I was being paid to exercise that muscle. And we would make recordings, and we would so for a period of almost 20 years, I was in that culture on some level. I was there full time for a while, then I went away for a couple of years, and then I came back, and I was away, and then I came back. But I was in a relationship with this culture there where I was paid to write songs. I was making a decent living. I wasn't worried about where I was going to get my money from. I had the freedom to go play other things that weren't church related. If I wanted to try to find a coffee house to play in, or, a club that I might go for an open mic night or something like that. I had a lot of friends that were, making music, creating music, arranging music. And, kind of in the middle of that first turn at the church, I ended up leaving the church to take a job in Spokane, Washington, with a group of guys that were going to be traveling doing school assemblies for high school students. And this involved feats of strength as kind of a hook to get kids' attention. We do crazy stuff, blow up hot water bottles till they explode, break bricks with your head, this crazy stuff like that. But the whole idea was to get kids' attention and then to be able to speak positive values into their lives. So, what does that have to do with the music business? Well, I found myself essentially on the road 250 days a year or more, doing performances all the time in front of audiences. And I thought to myself, well, occasionally they would have me sing. And I thought, well, what if I made a record? Like maybe if I had an album, maybe I could sell that album, at these performances. So I borrowed some money from my father-in-law, and I went and made this record for $5,000, And the guy that produced it was a guy that was my college football quarterback, because he was the only guy. I was the only guy I knew in the music business, right? So we made this record together, and about a year and a half after we made the record together, he started dating the pop star Denise Williams.
Wow.
So they ended up getting married, and in the process of all of that, they got to know each other. And she had asked him, "Well, what do you know about the music business?" He said, "Well, I produced a record." "Well, what did you produce?" "Well, I produced this record for my friend Michael Peterson." So she heard the record. She really liked it. They formed a little production company called Gateway Music House. And at that time, she had just was on the heels of having Let's Hear It for the Boy, which was the the biggest song in the world at the time. And she was just on the heels of that. And she formed a production company and designed to help her get a gospel music deal. So they formed a production company, a publishing company, and based upon the record that he had produced for me and the relationship that I had with them, they signed me to my first publishing deal and my first management deal, which led to my first record deal with a major gospel label called Sparrow. And, by the summer of 1986, 87, something like that, I have to go back and look. I had an album out on a major label in the gospel field that had 5 top singles on the charts. So, I found myself basically predominantly playing in churches. So when I made the transition to go to Nashville and do country music, I had never really played in bars. I had never really played secular shows, secular meaning sort of without God in them, although I don't really believe that that's true. I believe God is in all of a creativity, but for the purpose of delineating, I had never really played shows that didn't involve gospel music, really. And so, I hadn't fronted a band really ever, except the worship band at church. So I didn't have a lot of the things, and I didn't have the road that a lot of people have to get there. What I did have, and I think this was really instrumental, was I had thousands of hours of knowing what it was like to sit with an audience with just my guitar and a story and a good song. And as it turned out, almost every one of my presentations that I made to record labels, I was able to, I don't want to say maneuver it, but I was able to request it and facilitate it in such a way that all of those showcases were me and my guitar and a story. And so that was a place where I was really comfortable and I was really good at it. And, thousands of hours of speaking to people about things that are connected to their lives and their hearts and their sense of purpose and their sense of being, their well-being, and their spirit, if you will, wasn't just a trick that I had up my sleeve. It was truthfully the desire of my heart to reach people. And I think that somehow when I was given the opportunity to do that, even though it wasn't gospel music, people felt something. They felt my sincerity. They felt my connection to them. And it was coupled with the years of experience of knowing how to do that and facilitate it. And so, that's certainly not a game plan that you would recommend to somebody growing up, to say, here's how you get in the music business. But that's just how it unfolded for me. I know it's a long answer to your short question, but that's really how it happened.
It's really pretty darn cool, though, the way it happened for you, because from a guy that's done it the other way, the traditional way, we did do the bars. We did do the agent thing. We did do, self-promotions and going on radio shows and promoting in advance and stuff, and it takes a lot to do that. And the biggest issue that I have with it, and you touched on it, is that you've got to make a living along the way. And in the process of doing that, you're having to do what the club and bar owners want, and that is to provide covers. They want to hear music they've heard before. And of course, here we are with my second vocal show band, which that one ended up being the group that was really, we were offered a position, or not a position, but an opportunity to be on a show with Dick Clark. Dick Clark's production of the Captain and Tennille summer music series, or whatever it was, something like that. And none of the networks picked it up, but that was going to be our big showcase. But we were all so ready for that. But those opportunities, unless you've got the right agent or the right producer there knocking on the doors for you and making this happen, it's so difficult. And you've got to be playing the covers. And I'm not saying that it wasn't a good experience for us. It was. But the way you did it, the path that you followed, my gosh, it's perfect, because it has positivity, through the whole thing. You're helping kids. You're doing what you want to do. You're writing your songs. You're performing your songs. You're happy with it. You're passionate with it, and it carries over. And obviously, you've been doing it for 30 plus years. So, how exciting and how cool is that?
Well, thank you for celebrating and recognizing that with me. I really appreciate it. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and over the years, on occasion, I have a young person ask me, "Well, how did you make it?" And what I've learned is that's not really the question they're asking. What they're really asking, even though they haven't articulated it, is how am I going to make it?
Yeah.
Because people generally don't ask that question unless, as a young person, unless that's what they're trying to find out. It's like, what did you do? Maybe I could do that too. And I just have come to the place where I say, I can tell you what I did, but we all have a different path. And whatever I did isn't necessarily going to work for you, except this one thing. I had determination. I was completely determined to grow. My goal wasn't even like, let's get a record deal. In fact, I remember my first record deal I got with Sparrow. After I signed the contract, the president of the record label was a guy named Billy Ray Hearn. He was a great guy. And I signed it, and I guess he could see how excited I was. And he said, well, that was the easy part. And I remember, I don't think I said anything out loud, but I remember thinking to myself, are you kidding me? Do you know how hard it is to get a record deal? He said, well, that was the easy part. And I just thought, wow. And you know what? He was right. Keeping a record deal and being successful and selling records, that was the hard part. So Um, I just I say, I don't know what you're going to do. I can tell you what I did, but you're not going to do what I did. You have to do it your way. And someday, when you're successful, you'll tell somebody else, "Hey, this is how I did it." But you got to find your own path. That's just how it unfolded for me.
Exactly. And you use the word determination, but it's 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 got another element in there too, Michael, and that is the passion for what you do. And without that passion, I mean, that's the driving force. That's what keeps you happy. That's what helps you create the the satisfaction of your creative juices,
Yeah,
and having the opportunity to put them on vinyl or performing them. And
sure.
and I guess that leads me into the next part of what I was going to talk to you about, and that is the mere fact that over the last 30 plus years, you have performed over 2,500 times in 19 different countries. That's phenomenal. And you obviously uh, had some great people behind you. I don't know if that was because of the time you were in the military that a lot of that happened. I'm going to assume that's probably what part of that was. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, when I sat down to figure out, because I wondered one day, I wonder how many performances I've done in my life. So I went on this journey to kind of figure that out. And when I first came up with the number, 2,500 to 3,000, I thought, nah, that's way too many. Can't possibly be that. Because if I look at the amount of country concerts I was doing, it's like that doesn't add up to that. So where those numbers come from is when I was, I told you when I left the church and I went to work for this youth group that was, going out and doing assembly programs. We did, and I'm not exaggerating here, we did sometimes up to 6 programs a day. But usually it was 4 to 5 programs a day, 5 days a week, a Wednesday night church service, and 3 Sunday services. And I did that 50 weeks a year, 40 to 50 weeks a year for 3 years straight. I mean, that's where those numbers, that was my baptism in fire. Just over and over, thousands of times being in front of audiences, And then after I left that group and started my own thing, that would have been from 88 to 96. So in the 8 years that followed, I didn't do quite as many programs because I was out on my own. I wasn't with that group of guys anymore, but it wasn't much less. I bet I was easily doing 200 days a year, 250 a year, 20 programs a week. So, and that's where those numbers got so gigantic, So, in my country music career, I would say in the 3 years that I had a major label, really vibrant hit records on the radio career, 3 to 4 years of that, we did, I would say, close to 800 shows.
Okay.
And on top of the shows, there was TV appearances, there was promotion appearances, there was radio visits. I mean, it was just go, 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 go. So after I left that, and then started doing stuff with the military, I did 11 trips to places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Korea, Germany. I know in Iraq and Afghanistan, I did at least 150 performances. And these would be performances where in a day we'd be on a Black Hawk helicopter and we'd fly to 4 different places. And we'd get off, the chopper would land, we'd get off, and there might be 10 people at that performance. We'd set up a little PA and I'd perform.
Sure.
And then sometimes there was, 1,000 people there. It just was really, really diverse that way. So, I suppose I've done somewhere around 500 per presentations for military audiences and veterans and military families over the years. I never served in the military. My wife did. She served 30 years, retired as a full colonel. But I mean, that's how you get to that amount of performances. It's just, I remember after I left Sony, I had my second record deal with Nashville was with Sony, and after I left Sony, I thought, well, what should I do? And I just decided that whatever God brought my way, I was going to say yes. Because I had a feeling that the line for people looking for a new contract and big money, that line probably was around the block. But the line the line of people looking to serve others without any concern for the paycheck, but just to see how you could use your talents to serve others, I figured there wouldn't be very many people in that line. And I was right. And so, my first couple of years after I left Sony, and my gigs started drying up, the money started going down because I wasn't having hits on the radio. I would bet 90% of what I did for pro bono. People would pay my expenses, but I did it pro bono. And I learned a big lesson. I learned that it was a perfect way for people to experience your gift. Because many times, if you had to negotiate a certain price before you would go share your gift, you would never get the deal. But when you were available to serve people and work with people and truly, sincerely try to help them, number one, you always made friends. Number two, sometimes you made money. And in retrospect, number three, the three biggest financial deals that I ever did were all a result of me having gone and done something for somebody for free, which then later turned, hey, could we hire you to do this for us? I mean, the biggest checks I ever got from doing music came as a result of me serving for free. So it just, there's no shortage of people that need help that I thought I might be able to serve. And I started to think of myself not just as a country songwriter or artist. I started to realize I was more than that, as we all are. We're
Sure.
all more than that. I was the writer. I could write. I could help with branding. I could be a communicator and a messaging person. And so I just embraced all of that because I figured, you know what? I love the music and I think people will love it too. But if I only give them one door to walk through to find me, that's not as effective as if they could find me in a book. They could find me at a speaking event. They could find me at a school. Right? So it just felt like it was a smarter idea to create a lot of opportunities for people to find me because essentially, in the end, I never was about just trying to sell music. I was always about trying to reach people. And honestly, if your music doesn't reach people, they won't buy it anyway. So the whole idea is to move people, to move their hearts. So I started my little company on the heels of, being at Sony. I called it Moving People, which, not coincidentally is also my initials, MP. MP is Moving People. So that was where I felt I had a strength and something to offer. And over the course of those years, since I left my deal with Sony, I've made 8, maybe 10 more albums. I've had the most fun. I have more fun in the last 15 years than I had when I had my hits. I'm having more fun now. There's more joy, plenty of money, plenty of work, and I feel like I'm doing something that matters.
That's so fantastic. Well, we've been talking a lot about how you got to where you're at. Now let's talk about some of the music, because that to me is some of the most
Sure.
exciting part of all of this.
Yeah.
Too Good to Be True. The first time I heard this song, first of all, me being a drummer, when I heard that beat to that song, I'm going, wow, this song is really grabbing my attention to have that kind of beat in a country song. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. So I had one of my mentors was a guy named Gene Pastilli. And if you look Gene Pastilli up on Google, you'll find it. Gene was one of the founding members of Manhattan Transfer. He produced Jim Croce. He dated Bette Midler for years, wrote some of her big songs. He wrote Sunday Will Never Be the Same for Spanky and Our Gang. He wrote song for Randy Travis, which was, ASCAP Song of the Year. I mean, this guy was a very successful songwriter. And he and I had become really close friends. And we had started writing together, and we had written together, 13 or 14 times, and we had never hooked one. But we liked each other's company. So he kept, because he was a big wig and I wasn't, right? So he kept making space for me. We'd come and we'd hang out. A lot of times we wouldn't write at all. We just talk and laugh. And you know, kind of in the middle of all of that process, I was about to make my record for Warner's. I got in a deal. And I was at the gym, and on the gym television in front of the treadmill, MTV was playing. And they were showing a video of this hip hop band called, or this R&B hip hop band called TLC. I don't know if you remember that band. And I think they're the band that had the song Waterfalls,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of other hits. So one of their hits was playing, and there was this little loop that was going on in this production. And I thought, I wonder what it would be like if you could write a country song against a hip hop groove. Like, what would that be like? What would that result in? So that was where the idea was born. So I went back home and I pulled out my drum machine and I found a groove that I liked, that I thought sounded like an R&B thing. And it could more that slash hip hop soul R&B thing. So I went to Gino's for my next writing appointment. And I said, hey, I got this idea. What if we took like this groove, which is not a country groove, but we put against it, like, let's not write an R&B song. Let's write a country song, a legit country song that could lay over the top of this groove in a way that would feel really organic. I said, let's try to do that. So off we went, you know, and, you know, I've never done any research to prove this, but I think I'm right about this. The Too Good to Be True, because now that's commonly done. The hip hop and the R&B grooves and the country music commonly done. But I would venture to say that song Too Good to Be True was the first country song that did that and was a hit on the radio. Now, I know Shania Twain had a song that she put out that had a hip hop groove that hit the airwaves before mine did, right? But Too Good to Be True was the third single off that album. And I think that hip hop song she had was either the first or second single off of her album. And so I think we might have been the first.
You were all she ever wanted, that was once upon a time. She was all you ever needed, that's what makes it such a crime. How you took her heart for granted, how you threw her love away. Now you still don't understand it. If you did, you'd never say it was too good to be true. What did you expect a girl as good as her to do? What do you think would make that woman go find somebody new? She's not too good to be true. She's just too good to be true to you.
So in 1990, I just made a commitment to myself that, you know, I guess whatever you were supposed to have, I didn't have it yet. So I decided I wouldn't go back to Nashville until I had some kind of a green light in the universe, like something made it so clear to me that I was supposed to go back. I wouldn't go back until then. And I really buckled down on my songwriting for those 3 years. So in 1993, this song that I wrote, Taking Your Love for Granted, which had been sitting around for 10 years at that point. And I didn't even pitch it to them. I didn't even know how they got it. I just got a call one day from the publisher saying, hey, they've cut this song. And for next thing I knew, it was the first single and went to #1. So I took that as a green light. That green light I said I've been looking for. Like, I never had anything to walk in to Nashville with that said, hey, I've already been a success. So now I had a #1 song, which it was gospel #1, but nonetheless, it was #1. And at the same time, kind of around that time, two friends independent of each other took me to lunch and said, hey, how come you're not in Nashville? So I just felt like the green lights were opening up for me to go. So right around that time, so I started going, and kind of in that window, my first trip, I met, by fate or by chance, the executive vice or publishing at BMG in their gospel division. And he brought me into his office after he saw me at a Shoney's for lunch. And he said, I don't want you to play me any music. I just have one question to ask you. How often do you get to town? And I said, well, I haven't been here in 3 years. And before that, I'd come 5 or 6 times. And he looked me in the eye and he said, no one in this town is going to take you serious if you come once a year. You just have to come way more often than that. And then he said, before I kick you out of my office, I'm going to tell you that if you decide to come back on a more regular basis, I'll try to do what I can to help you. So I went home. I looked at my frequent flyer miles I had saved up and said, I got to figure out a way to do this. So for the next 3 years, from 93 to 96, I only missed 1 month, but I went a week a month to Nashville. Got a cheap hotel, a cheap rent-a-car, and hung out for a week at all the songwriter events and just met people. And I went a week a month for 3 years. And it was sort of towards the end of that I was, back home in Seattle. I was walking through this little video store, back when Blockbuster was a thing. And I was looking, I thought, song titles are song titles and you can't copyright a song title. So let me walk through the library and see if I see something I think could be a good song title. And so I was walking through this VHS store and I saw this movie title, From Here to Eternity. And I just wrote that down in my book. I thought, well, that'd be a interesting song title. Of course, I didn't know that, the theme song to the movie was From Here to Eternity, and it had already been a big hit back when the movie was a hit with Frank Sinatra. I didn't know all that. I just put it in my notebook, So fast forward, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, I'm in Nashville. I've got Robert Ellis Oral is interested in me, and, looks like I'm going to get a record deal. We're writing together. And, every good songwriter, I think, shows up in appointments with ideas, in a book where you go, how about this? Or how about this? How about that? So I said to Robert, because I had this idea on the way to the writing appointment, and I said to myself, what would it be like? Because I've heard a lot of wedding songs, but I never heard a song that actually the guy that's popping the question could use to pop the question. Like if you could write a song that guy could use, so he wouldn't have to say anything to the girl. All he'd have to do is have the ring in his hand and tell her, listen to this.
I did everything I could to get you here tonight without telling you why. Now, girl, if you only would, please hold out your hand and just close your eyes. Well, I've been dying to ask you one burning question. Will you be mine from here to eternity? I'm asking you to share your life with me now and forever. I guarantee I'll always stay by your side. I promise my love to you. I'm willing and able and ready to. Whatever you need, I am here for you. And I'll always be from here to eternity. Well, I saved a year for this ring. I can't wait to see how it looks on your hand. I'll give you everything that one woman needs from a one-woman man. I'll be strong, I'll be tender, man of my word, and I will be yours from here to eternity. I'm asking you to share your life with me now and forever. I guarantee I'll always stay by your side. I promise my love to you. I'm willing and able and ready to. Whatever you need, I am here for you, and I'll always be from here to eternity.
And I just thought, what if he could write a song that could speak on his behalf? And how cool would that be if it actually worked and people actually used it? So that was the nugget of the thought for it. And then I thought, well, I wonder what that song could be called. And then I thought of that title from here today. Well, what the heck? Why not? So Robert and I sat down, and in a couple of writing appointments, we wrote the song, and we liked it. That's why I say to this day, I don't know if you can write a hit song. I think you can write songs that are really compelling and engaging. But the universe conspires and timing conspires to make it a hit.
Exactly.
And, at the time we wrote it, we liked it. We loved it. Like every great songwriter, what's your favorite song? Oh, the one I just wrote, but then it came out, and I remember sitting with Dwayne Blackwell. Dwayne wrote, among other things, Friends in Low Places, co-wrote that for Garth Brooks. And Dwayne and I were friends, and he was a mentor of mine. And after he listened to the album, this guy was a genius, man, a freaking genius. After he listened to the album before, I think maybe Drink Swear had already come out, but it turned come out yet. He listened to the whole album. I sat in his office, he listened. And when he got done listening, he pulled the album out. He looked at the back cover. He pointed it From Here to Eternity. And he said, that's your biggest hit. That's your number one song. And he called it, man, because he was right. That was From Here to Eternity became the only Billboard number one off that album. Even though to this day, Drink Swear Still and Lie has probably got more well, not probably, I know it does, it has almost 1 million more airplays than From Here to Eternity does. But, it was just a beautiful thing. And to watch literally thousands of people and receive letters and emails and phone calls, and for those 2 years that followed that hit, that I was on the road a lot, every show we did, somebody proposed at one of my shows. They came on stage and made a proposal. It's just special.
Very cool. Well, you alluded to the next one that I was going to talk to you about, and that's Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie. That definitely garnered some major attention on the same album that year. So talk about that one a little bit too.
Yeah. Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie came about. I was I moved to Nashville in August of 96. I had an offer from EMI, a publishing deal. I said, okay, I'd like to do, they hadn't signed the contract yet. And so we moved our family from Seattle to Nashville. And the second week or third week that I got to Nashville and was started to take a serious look at getting this contract signed so I could start making a draw from EMI, the president of EMI got fired. And my attorney, Al Schlesinger at the time, said to me, I signed this contract now. And I said, why? And he said, well, because the person who really wanted to sign you isn't going to be there anymore. So you'll be somebody else's sign for the new guy. And he said, I'm just concerned that that's not a good long-term strategy for you. So if you don't have to take this deal, you might think about trying to find another deal. Well, I knew deals didn't grow on trees. It had been over 10 years since I'd had a deal. Right. But something in my gut told me he was right. But I needed a job. So I thought I need a job where I can still write songs during the day. So I need a nighttime job. So I got a job working at the BP on Belle Meade at a convenience store for $7.50 an hour. And I figured, from midnight to 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., there'd probably be some windows in there where there's not a lot of people, and maybe I could work on songs during that. So it was in the middle of that I got this idea. I was sitting watching one of the big gas tankers, the oil tankers, filling up those gas tanks. And I thought to myself, I was sitting there, I had my guitar in my hand. So I'm the guy behind the cash register with a guitar in his hand at 4 a.m, right? And I'm playing this little kind of what feels like a bluegrass riff. But I don't really play bluegrass. I didn't really know bluegrass music very much. But I thought, look how that feels. And while I was sitting there, I had this thought. What if you could actually, to step back a minute, years before that, I'd heard a great communicator, mentor friend of mine say that great communicators have a secret. I said, well, what's the secret? He said, the secret is they will take something that people know, and then they will show them something they didn't know about it. And that's a quick way to get into people's minds. Take something they already know and then show them something about it that they didn't know. And so I'd already been playing with how do you work that into songwriting? How do you twist people's minds so that they go, I think it's this. Oh, no, it's that. So I thought, well, what if you could take some cliches, country music cliches, and turn them inside out? Like people think it's this thing, but it's actually that thing. Right. And I'd seen a friend of mine had done that in a book. And I thought, I bet that could be a song. And so I said, drink, swear, steal, and lie. Those are 4 things that you could turn into surprising people with the hook. Like, oh, that's what he meant. So that's really where that song started. And so I sat there, for night after night after night, hammering out the first verse and chorus. And then I went and played it for my friend Michael Purrier, who was the guy who was working at BMG, who told me if I'd come to more often, he'd help me. And he, in fact, had helped me. And I played it for him, and he said, well, why don't I hook you up with one of my writers? So he hooked me up with Paula Carpenter. And in one session together, we finished up the song. I liked it. They liked it. I went and did a demo. So now I'm still working at the BP. And I'm thinking to myself, I heard about a friend of mine making $50 a song to go sing demos. I thought I could sing one song and make $50, which would take me 8 hours working here. Right? Maybe 7 hours working here. And I thought maybe I could get a job as a background or a background singer or a demo singer. So I had 2 demos I'd done at that point. One of them was "We're Still in Line," and made an appointment with BMI. And I thought they're going to have to see me because I wrote this #1 song for the Imperials. At least, excuse me, it was with ASCAP. So I went to make this appointment with ASCAP, and I thought they're going to have to see me. So sure enough, they made an appointment for me with one of their A&R guys named Clay Bradley. And Clay Bradley was the grandson of Owen Bradley and Harold Bradley's nephew. So, produced Patsy Cline and all of that. So he came from a long line of country music royalty. So I walked in his office, we met. He said, what can I do for you? So I want to get some work as a demo singer. And he said, well, do you have anything I can hear your voice? So I played him That's What They Said About the Buffalo, the demo I had, and Drinks Were Still in Lie, both the demos. And he stopped during the first song halfway, and he said, is that you singing? I said, yeah. He said, who wrote the song? I said, I did. He said,
I was 12 when Daddy said to me, don't take to drinking, boy, that road don't lead nowhere. And don't you ever let me hear you swear, don't you dare. He told me stealing is a lazy man's way. Something for nothing leaves you held to pay, so don't lie. Then you can look the whole world in the eye. Honey, I tried, but since I met you, girl, I'm breaking every rule. I must confess I'm just a backsliding fool. I wanna drink from your loving cup, swear I'll never give you up, steal all your kisses underneath the moon. I wanna lie here close to you. Look what you made me do, darling, you're the reason why I drink, swear, steal, and lie.
$50 a song gig turned into my music business career. You know, it's just, you know, you walk down the road, kind of the way you do if you're driving down a dirt road with no street lights and no full moon. All you have is the headlights on your vehicle. You have just enough headlights to keep moving forward. And you don't know what's on the horizon. You don't know if your map is accurate. All you really have is that 50-foot of headlight. And I moved through my life that way. The way we all do, I think, on some level. That's how we move through life. I think we have illusions of knowing. But I mean, that's, you know, I just did the next right thing. And the next right thing was always driven by, you know, take a chance on your dreams. Because I knew I didn't want one of those jobs that was in the newspaper. And that's how it turned out.
It's pretty cool, man. Great story. You know, fans and critics alike.
I'm talking too much. I'm giving you way too much, but I mean, those are my stories from my heart, you know.
Well, and that's what we want to hear, man. You know, fans and critics alike have named When the Bartender Cries as one of the country music best country music songs ever that's been written. That is a really cool video. I love that video, and I talk about that one a little bit.
Okay, so at the time I got my deal with Warner's and we're working towards making the record, I was writing as much as I could. I think I wrote 70 songs in that year from when I got my deal, from the time I got my publishing deal to the time I got my record deal, and kind of that few months that followed. So, I mean, I was working my tail off. And one of my co-writers was a woman named Hunter Davis. And I walked into a writing appointment with Hunter at EMI, in the basement of EMI. And she had a New York Times edition of the New York Times in her hand. And she said, hey, look at this. And it was a story in the New York Times about a bar that was being forced out of business because he lost his lease. And the writer of the article said even the tender was crying. And we looked at each other, chuckled like, wow, you know things are bad when the bartender cries, because he hears everybody's sob stories. And the moment we said that, we both looked at each other like, oh my goodness, did you hear what we just said? And so that was where that started. And
this bar has been my home away from her. Used to be, she was missing me. But now she's moving in with her best friend, and I'm the only one who wants what used to be. I'm here because today I lost it all. I didn't want to drink it home alone. But I just can't believe all my hopes and dreams are falling like a roll dominoes. Well, I thought the man behind the bar had heard it all before. My story must have caught him by surprise, 'cause when he handed me my double, there were tears in his eyes. You know you're in trouble when the bartender cries. He said, last night you swore you'd never drink again. I said, next time I'm really gonna try. So if she ever calls for me, oh, you can finally tell her he ain't here, and it won't be a lie. I asked the man behind the bar what he'd been crying for. He said that bottle used to be a friend of mine. Now I've stopped drinking doubles, but I pour them all of the time. Son, you know you're in trouble when the bartender cries. I saw my own reflection staring back at me. I knew every single word he said was true. Well, I told the man behind the bar I thought I'd seen it all before, till I saw the sadness in his eyes. That's when I put down my double, said my last goodbyes. 'Cause you know you're in trouble when the bartender cries. Lord, you know you're in trouble when the bartender cries.
Started. And so we wrote, the initial version of it, and the chorus was identical every time. And it just kept bothering me, because the first time that I would play it for people, they'd be like blown away, like, wow. But when we'd get to the second chorus, they didn't have the same response. And I just kept thinking, it's sort of like a joke. Like if you tell the same joke to the same group of people 2 or 3 times, you just don't get the same response the second, third, and fourth time, because they already know sort of into the punchline. So I thought, well, you got to mix it up somehow. So here we were. I think we had a week left before we were going to go in the studio and make the record. And I just spent the entire week 24/7 trying to think how I could change the second and the third chorus so they would still be similar enough to the first chorus, but it wouldn't be like a shift, but it would move the story forward. And so I literally walked in the day that we were going to record and said, I've got a new lyric. Here it is. And I think that was that little extra push that really made that song to a new level. And, of all the songs that I've ever recorded that were released on major labels, that's the song that seems to have the deepest, most personal impact on listeners. The letters I've gotten. I remember getting a letter one day from a woman who sent me a letter and a car key that was cut in half. So I'm like, well, this is interesting. What is this? So I wanted to read. She said, this car key was my husband's car key. And my husband was a severe alcoholic and almost killed himself several times driving. So I took away his car key and I cut it in half and I wore it around my neck on a necklace to remind myself, because he was an alcoholic. She said, my husband heard your song, You Know You're in Trouble When the Bartender Cries. And it so profoundly impacted his life that he got into AA, and now he's been clean and sober for a year. She said, "I'm sending you this key because I don't need to wear it anymore. Thank you for that song."
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great,
So, I
man.
mean, those are the things that, like, you can't, like I said, you can't really write a hit song. Just try to write a great song. And where they go and who they touch is really out of your hands, and you can't take so much credit for it, but you sure can feel grateful for being the recipient of those gifts that the universe brings, you as a part of.
Exactly. There, when I saw the tribute to Glenn Campbell video, um, when was that done, Michael? And what's the story behind that? How
Yes.
was it a whole
Okay.
show of just you doing Glenn Campbell music, or what was that?
Well, in 2016, I became the musical director for a musical called Raiding the Country Vault, VAULT. So there was a show in Las Vegas that was the #1 show and music show in Las Vegas called Raiding the Rock Vault. And the whole premise behind the show was that it featured real rock stars playing the best set list of rock classics that you ever heard. So instead of being a cover band playing cover tunes, these were real rock stars playing the greatest set list of rock tunes you ever heard. So like the lead guitar player from Heart and just people like that. And so the guy that was the producer of that show and I became friends. And I said to him one day, "Have you ever thought about doing a country version of that show?" So down that road we went, and it resulted in me going to Nashville, to Branson, Missouri. And we replicated the same thing with a country show. So I hired, the whole cast were all people that had either written songs or toured with hit artists and had a pedigree. These were all legit country music, a part of the country music family people. And so, we essentially it was what we called real country and real country stars. So the real country stars in the show, people that had #1 records. Then there was real country music, so real traditional country music. So that show, was an hour and a half long show that became really from a brand new show in Branson. By the end of the year, we were the #1 concert show in Branson for 2 years running on TripAdvisor. And that video is one of the songs that I sang in that show. It was a tribute to Glenn Campbell that I sang in that show. And so when I was, nearing my tenure there, the end of my tenure there, I made this record to celebrate my 20th anniversary in country music with 37 records. And that was one of the we recorded. And so it was really I was always a big Glenn Campbell fan, but singing that song hundreds of times, night after night in front of audiences, really I connected to it deeply emotionally. And that was what made me want to record it as a cover, as my tribute to Glenn Campbell.
Well, I'll tell you this, man. It's the best cover that I've ever heard of Wichita Lineman.
Oh, well, thanks.
I did that. I
Thank you
did
very
that
much.
song. I did that song with a guy by the name of Jeff Lynn Henson, who was in our band for a brief period of time. He was out here at Fort Bliss in El Paso in the military, and he played with us off and on for less than a year. But he's quite a guy. He sounded a lot like Tom Jones when he sang, and he was a showman. He'd get out front and really turn it on with the women and everything, really good. And in fact, his wife, her aunt is Florence Henderson, who just passed away, from the Brady Bunch. But anyway, when I heard you do that, I'm going, wow, this is the real thing. It really, really sounded good. And,
thanks. I appreciate that. I know there's an old saying that says, "Whatever comes from the heart goes to the heart." And that song really came from my heart. So I think that's why it reaches people.
Yes, yes. And your musicians are just first rate. They were really good. So, well, my friend, I know
appreciate
you.
saying that.
Well, you're welcome. And I know you've got to get on with some other appointments that you've got going. So I want to do another show with you in the future, and I want to include your wife Jill with you on that show when we do it, and expound a little bit more about some other things that have happened in your life. And I think that'll be kind of a neat thing to talk about. But in the meanwhile, I really appreciate you coming on here with me today, Michael. This has been really fun.
Thank you for having me.
it's been a lot of fun, and you're the real deal, man. I really appreciate your talent, your passion, and just keep on doing it, man. Just keep on doing it, because
I will.
you've got an audience out there. You certainly have a fan in me now. You know, it's really
Oh,
been
thank you, man.
great getting to know you, and hopefully someday we can meet in person. You know, I've got some friends that live in Las Vegas, and
That'd be great.
hopefully next time I get over there, you know, who knows when that'll be, but we'll certainly look you up, you know.
Oh man, I'd love that. That'd be great. Thank you for having me on the show. Appreciate your professionalism, your passion, and your warmth. It really comes across. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Michael. We'll talk to you real soon, okay, buddy?
All right. Okay, man.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you all enjoyed this show as much as I did producing it. I think you'll agree with me that Michael Peterson is one of those special shining stars in the music industry. I want to end this show with the video we were talking about where he did the tribute to Glenn Campbell in Branson, Missouri. Enjoy Michael Peterson's Wichita Lineman.
I am a lineman for the county, and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the wine. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line. I know I need a small vacation, but it don't look like a rain. If it snows, that stretch down south won't ever stand the strain. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line.